in the pre-dawn darkness of October 8, 1895, assassins swarmed the royal palace in Seoul and burst into the queen's private chambers. Blades flashed in the gloom and fell upon the sleeping queen of Joseon, again and again, over 30 times in total. By the time the screams fell silent, her silk bedding was soaked in blood, and the most powerful woman in Korea lay butchered in her own bed. The victim of this grisly attack was Queen Min, also known posthumously as Empress Myeongseong, the wife of King Gojong of Korea. She was no passive royal consort. Queen Min was a shrewd political force who effectively controlled the Korean court in the late 19th century. Her determination to keep Korea independent and her influence over the king earned her many enemies at home and abroad. In the end, those enemies conspired to eliminate her in one of the most brutal assassinations in history. The shocking manner of her death would send shockwaves through Korea and the world, and ensure that her story would not be easily forgotten. It was a turbulent time in Korea. The year was 1895, and the Joseon kingdom stood caught between competing empires. Japan, newly modernized and hungry for dominance, had just defeated China in the First Sino-Japanese War, gaining sway over Korea's affairs. Queen Min, fiercely protective of her nation's sovereignty, sought counterweights to Japanese influence. She courted alliances with Russia and other powers, hoping to thwart Japan's ambitions. This made her a mortal threat in the eyes of the Japanese and their Korean collaborators. Within Korea, Queen Min had also crossed powerful figures. One was her own father-in-law, the Hungsun Daewongun, Prince Regent Yi Ha-ung. He despised his daughter-in-law for sidelining him and pursued a pro-Japanese stance. By 1895, Queen Min's clout eclipsed even King Gojong's, and she had survived multiple earlier plots against her life. But with Japan's victory in war, her enemies saw an opportunity to strike decisively. Tensions mounted in the royal court. Whispers of a plot swirled that autumn. Queen Min's fate was being sealed in shadowy meetings, and the queen, steadfast and defiant, could not imagine the horror that was about to be unleashed. In the eyes of her assassins, Queen Min's crime was her resistance to foreign domination. Japanese officials in Seoul viewed her as an obstacle to their colonial designs, even likening her to a cunning fox in need of a hunt. They decided this elegant, intelligent woman had to be removed by any means necessary. In September 1895, Japan's newly arrived envoy, Miura Goro, quietly forged a murderous plan with co-conspirators that included Queen Min's bitter father-in-law. Tellingly, they dubbed their secret plot Operation Fox Hunt, a code name that revealed their deadly intent. Behind closed doors, these men effectively sentenced the Korean queen to death without trial. Miura recruited a band of ronin, masterless samurai mercenaries, and Korean collaborators eager to curry favor with Japan. In the early hours of October 8, 1895, they prepared to execute their plan. Pro-Japanese guards inside the palace betrayed their sovereign and quietly unbarred the gates, allowing an armed mob of some 50 assassins to rush into the grounds. The trap was set. While the royal court slept, dark figures crept through the corridors of Gyeongbokgung Palace, knives and swords in hand. Queen Min would receive no justice or mercy, only the swift, savage verdict of her enemies. At dawn, the executioners came for the queen. They struck just before sunrise. The stillness of the palace was shattered as intruders in dark uniforms stormed Queen Min's residence. Courtiers and servants jolted awake to the sound of boots and screams. The assassins showed no restraint. Women of the court were dragged out by their hair and hurled off verandas onto the hard ground below. Anyone who got in their way was cut down mercilessly. In the chaos, 2 court ladies were slaughtered on the spot, mistaken in the dim light for the queen herself. But that was just the beginning of the nightmare. Deeper inside the chambers, Queen Min had bolted her doors at the first hint of danger. Terrified, she tried to hide as pandemonium neared her quarters. Outside, her husband King Gojong and the crown prince were held at gunpoint by traitorous guards, powerless to help as the assassins closed in. A crash. The door gave way. Armed men flooded into the queen's bedroom. In the faint glow of oil lamps, they found a petite, frightened woman in night clothes, the Queen of Joseon. For one heartbeat, time froze. The hunters had their prey at last. Then all hell broke loose. The attackers pounced. Queen Min was seized and thrown to the floor, her elegant hair ripping loose as they grabbed at her. She managed a single piercing scream, cut short by the first stab of a dagger. What followed was a frenzy of violence almost too horrific to describe. The assassins pinned down the 43-year-old queen and stabbed her over and over. Sharp blades plunged into her abdomen and chest repeatedly, splattering blood across the silk curtains and tatami mats. Her assailants showed no mercy or haste. They wanted her to suffer. One Japanese swordsman leapt onto the queen's chest with his full weight. The crack of her ribs breaking echoed through the chamber. And then he brought his sword down, cleaving her head with a single terrible blow. In that gruesome moment, Queen Min's life was extinguished. But the assassins were not finished with her corpse. The final blow was still to come. The killers dragged the queen's limp, blood-soaked body out into the courtyard. By now, the sky was beginning to lighten with dawn, revealing the faces of the murderers, spattered with royal blood. They cruelly hoisted the queen's mutilated body on display before the few horrified onlookers, a final humiliation for the woman who had defied them. But even death did not sate their cruelty. Determined to erase Queen Min's existence entirely, the assassins carried her corpse to a quiet spot in the palace gardens, where a pile of brushwood awaited. They doused her body in oil and set it ablaze. Flames consumed the queen's remains, the acrid smell of burning flesh curling into the morning air. When the fire died down, the assassins scattered her charred ashes and bone fragments in the forest soil. The last empress of Korea was quite literally reduced to ashes. By sunrise, nothing recognizable of Queen Min was left, only a scorched patch of earth and a legend that was just beginning. Word of the atrocity spread quickly, sending waves of anger and grief through the kingdom. King Gojong, in fear for his own life after witnessing his wife's fate, fled with the crown prince to the safety of the Russian legation in Seoul soon after the murder. The Korean public was stunned and outraged. Instead of cowing the populace, Queen Min's assassination became a rallying cry. Anti-Japanese militias rose up across the country, vowing to avenge their slain queen. Far from securing their hold on Korea, the Japanese found that this bloody deed turned Korean and international opinion sharply against them. Even foreign observers expressed horror at the savagery of the attack, which they knew had Japanese backing. Meanwhile, Queen Min's elderly father-in-law, the Daewongun, strolled into the palace with Japanese troops and seized control of the royal court mere days after his daughter-in-law's death. For a short time, he achieved his long-desired return to power, effectively a coup enabled by the assassins. The Japanese, attempting to dodge blame, denied official involvement, and even pressured King Gojong to strip Queen Min of her titles to blacken her name. He refused. Tokyo did stage a trial of Miura Goro and the killers in Hiroshima, mostly for show. As expected, all the perpetrators were acquitted, despite abundant evidence of their guilt. Some of the assassins were so brazen that they even posed proudly for a photograph in Seoul after the killing, confident they would face no punishment. Justice, it seemed, would not come from the courts. Yet the assassination badly backfired on Japan's ambitions in the short term. Queen Min became a martyr in the eyes of the Korean people. In 1897, King Gojong returned from refuge and, in defiance of Japanese influence, proclaimed the Korean Empire, elevating his late wife to the honored title of Empress Myeongseong. He gave her a state funeral fit for an empress, though heartbreakingly, the searchers could recover only a single finger bone of her body for burial. The brutal manner of Queen Min's death had galvanized Korean resolve. For a time, it slowed Japan's takeover. But tragically, it did not prevent Korea's colonization a few years later, in 1910. The Queen's assassination, however, remained seared into Korea's national memory. Queen Min's story is a sobering tale of cruelty and courage. Her assassination exposed the extreme lengths an imperial power would go to silence a leader who dared to resist. It was not only an attack on one woman, but on a nation's hopes to remain free from foreign domination. For Koreans, the Eulmi Incident, as the assassination is known, became a symbol of Japan's oppression, and Queen Min herself became a symbol of patriotic resistance. To this day, she is remembered and honored as a national heroine who stood up to formidable foes. Her life was cut short in the most horrifying way, yet her legacy endures in the countless stories, dramas, and memorials dedicated to her memory. Her fate also forces us to confront an uneasy question. What would we sacrifice for our country's freedom? Queen Min knew the dangers she faced by defying a rising empire, yet she persisted until the end. Her courage in the face of terror still resonates. In the darkness of her final night, confronted by pure cruelty, she did not cower or beg. She met death as the Queen of Joseon. Would you have had the courage to stand up as she did, even knowing it could cost everything? The answer is not easy, and it is exactly this timeless quality that makes her story so powerful and so haunting. Thank you for witnessing this harrowing chapter of history. Queen Min's assassination is a story that stirs strong emotions. Anger, sorrow, horror. How does her story make you feel? Let's discuss it in the comments. If you found this story gripping, make sure to subscribe for more dark and true tales from history. Stay tuned for that nightmare from the past, and thank you for watching.